Okay, so I know that was kind of silly and everything, but when I saw it, it kind of made me think of when I started teaching, and you really kind of have to, you get all these strategies about classroom management, and you hear about it when you're in school, and you student teach, and they talk to you about classroom management, etc. But until you really make it your own, you're not successful. And that was yes, it was silly, and I'm not saying I don't want anybody to go back and start calling people out for who they like or anything like that, but it is kind of, it illustrates how we're able to kind of make the classroom our own, and that when we do that and we're comfortable with that, then we're going to be great moving forward with learning, which is what we all are here to do, to make sure that we're teaching and that learning is happening in our classroom. So this whole thing that I'm going to talk to you about today is a support system to help you with your classroom management. Some of you have already been a part of the PFI process, so you know what it is. We're reviving it and bringing it back, so I'm going to kind of define it for you and let you know exactly why we're doing it and how it's going to be implemented moving forward. So the CCRPI score that we get every year is calculated by these four things that we have listed. We have the survey, we have student discipline, safe and substance-free learning environment, and attendance. Okay, those are four of the things that are calculated for CCRPI. The second one, which is student discipline, it says a measure of student discipline using a weighted suspension rate. Those suspension rates include in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension. So what that means is every time we have a referral in the system and the response to that referral is in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension, that score is weighed into our CCRPI score. So this whole deal is trying to kind of cut down on those referrals that we have. All right, so some stats from last year that I pulled. As a school, we totaled 591 office referrals last year. 336 of those were in regular education classrooms in the school. 198 of these were considered level 1 or minor incident referrals, and I'm going to talk about minor incidents in a second. Okay, these stats really jumped out to me. That is a lot of office referrals, and it's something that I feel like we can definitely work to cut down on this year. So as I started looking at these stats and trying to think to myself, what can we do? Because I know, we've got great teachers in place. We've got so many awesome things happening at Centerville. What can I do to put some things in place to kind of help and support that classroom management? So this is kind of where we're going to. All right, so the plan for improvement, which is a PFI system, is basically a systematic behavioral process that gives students sequential consequences for minor or level 1 behavioral events. They allow teachers to take more ownership of the development of student behavior. They give specific consequences for specific infractions for students. They make the disciplinary process clear for the students as well as the parents by opening a continuous line of communication throughout the PFI process. Every time something goes on with that student and they receive a PFI, it's open communication between you, the student, and the parent. And then finally, they help to reduce the amount of office referrals by going through that sequential process, and that can directly affect or impact our CCRPI score, hopefully in the positive. Okay, so the implementation, kind of how this supports what you're doing. They're not meant to replace any of your current classroom strategies, okay, or your management strategies. They're there to support what you already have in place. So I know we have a couple of different things going on here as far as our classroom management. We have clip charts, we have dojo, and we have debit systems, okay? These PFIs are meant to support you in that range, okay? So, your clip charts, if they clip down 3 times, that'll be 3 minor incidents. That's one of the disciplinary things that's on your PFI chart. So if you have a student that clips down to that point in class, they're going to automatically get a PFI, and all you have to do is check they had 3 minor incidents in class. Same for your debit systems and your dojo points. Okay, it works alongside of what you already have in place. So we're not eliminating what you do in class as far as your disciplinary strategies and your management strategies. This is just a support system to go along with that. Okay, so in the very back of your presentation or your printouts, you have a copy of the PFI. You're all going to receive copies of these in your box when you get back from the break. But this is what it looks like. It's actually very similar to the one that was here years ago. Up top, you have your minor incidents that are up here. This is your level 1. All right, Mr. Coombs, I'm excited to come see you this afternoon. Come observe your class and see what's going on. I just want to ask you a couple of questions in this pre-conference, just to kind of open it up and make sure that we're on the same page heading in, and then obviously we'll have another meeting at the end so we can discuss what I saw and hopefully get some things from it. You know, generally pre-conferences are part of the TEACS platform, obviously, and you know they're supposed to be, well, a lot of people perceive them as one-sided from the person who's doing the observations, but I'd more like it to be an open dialogue, kind of go back and forth, and anything I can do to help you. You know, obviously, if there's anything that I see I can help you with, but you come back at me if there's anything that I can do for you to make you more effective. Just starting out, keeping the TEACS standards in mind, what do you feel that some of your greatest strengths as a teacher are? How you've kind of developed in the last couple of years?
I think collaboration with the students as well as my colleagues has been very helpful for me. I like to think as well it's helpful for them as well. But yeah, we have an opportunity to share a lot of information. A lot of my students in special education are below grade level. So when I have an opportunity to meet with the regular education teachers, that can be very helpful. You're probably not surprised, but they're very interested in the special education students. So it's kind of a lot of two-way feedback, and I think it benefits all of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, along the same lines, thinking about the TEACS standards, what are some areas that you feel like some constructive feedback from me might be helpful to you, some areas you feel like you could improve on?
Yeah, I definitely think I need to learn a lot more about the Georgia standards, especially at grade level. Many times I'm meeting my students at their level, so they could be in 4th grade but really functioning at a 1st grade level.
Well, that's challenging for you because you've got 3 grade levels in one class.
Exactly.
So I could see that being a challenge.
Yeah, and we really like to meet them and build a good foundation. So the more I could learn at the lower level, it might help me in the long run, getting them back to grade level.
That's a good point. Absolutely. We know kind of countywide, we've got a continued emphasis on PLCs, which is professional learning communities. What does that look like for you as far as being a special education teacher, not necessarily in a department or a grade level in the elementary school? What does that look like for you as far as meeting goes, and then what are some things that you've taken from those meetings that have helped you instructionally?
Sure. I actually have kind of a dual opportunity. We have specials at a time when I can meet with the 4th grade teachers, so I can participate on occasion with their community. I also have a smaller community with the special education teachers, and we meet roughly once a month before school starts. And part of our special education group is interrelated speech therapy, so you learn a lot of different things from a lot of different angles. Sometimes there's so much information you can't implement everything, but even the trainings I've been to, you know, they've been very helpful. When we have a staff day, you can bring back some of the ideas to the classroom pretty much immediately.
Are you able to pull anything instructionally from 4th grade meetings? I know it's a little bit tougher.
Yeah, they're more than willing to share, and they try to keep me on the same timeline as they are. But a lot of times, my students, they might not be up to that level. But it's definitely beneficial in the long run. I can always use it at a later date. All of that to say, they may be advanced up here, and we may still be down here, but at some point, I can bring them up.
Well, the lesson today, what are we going to be covering? What are we going to do?
We're going to have a mixed group. We actually have a student that will be dismissed. She's a fourth grader, so we'll be left with a group of a third grader and two fifth graders. My other students are at different locations during this time. So we've been preparing for the Georgia milestones, and one of the common threads for these students is going to be math. So I'm going to try to get a little small group going with two students. They're both fifth graders. And then my third grade student, I'm going to focus on some third grade things for him.
I really enjoyed the lesson. It's fun. Anytime it's entertaining to go down to your class, but it's really fun to see your students engaged. And they were very engaged that day. I know you were happy about it too. But they were super engaged, and I really enjoyed the lesson. Just kind of, along the lines before we get specifically into the lesson, just thinking about, how we do these TEKS, this process, because it is a structured process, but I do think it's very important that we keep that open line of communication and have it more of an open forum. So, I'm going to ask you some questions, but feel free to jump in at any time, talk to me about any concerns, anything you might have, and we'll go from there. Along the line of TEKS, just thinking about the standards that we talk about in TEKS, what do you feel like is your strength? If you have one, if you had to pick one or maybe a couple, what do you think your strength is as far as the standards involved?
For me, I'm thinking my strength actually revolves around the collaboration with the students as well as the faculty. And getting back to TEKS, the opportunities I have to discuss things with you, it actually helps us refine our practices. And by no means are we perfect. I think we have open communication. That was a tough one, or hey, this one worked out really well. We should try to take that approach in the future. So that's what it's all about for me. We're learning the students, we're learning each other, and we come up with a better product at the end. But without that communication, we may be off in left field somewhere doing the wrong things, but it really works for us.
I agree. Going back specifically to the lesson that I observed earlier, what standards or concepts do you think that your students were able to master in that lesson?
Yeah, it gets a little bit complex, even though the material is very simple. I have second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade students, and within that group, they're all at different levels. For example, a lot of my third graders, they're still learning your basic addition and subtraction. The lesson that you observed, we were doing single digits, and I think what they mastered was the application of addition and subtraction to word problems. So that was helpful for me. It let me realize that not only could they do basic addition and subtraction, they could apply that to a word problem. And a lot of them are still learning to master reading, so that level's very low as well. But you gotta try to tie in as much as you possibly can. Those teachable moments don't come around every day, so.
Especially with your class.
Yeah.
Added challenges there. So.
Yeah. As far as planning the lesson, we can script it on paper, but you have to remain very flexible. It could go from math to science in a hurry. So just trying to be as flexible as possible helps.
I agree. You talked a little bit about the different age groups and grade levels that you teach. How do you kind of plan to, and I know you talked about planning as well, but how do you plan to structure those lessons when you're dealing with second, third, fourth, and fifth graders that are all on a pretty vastly different level?
Yeah, when you look at the dynamics, usually the students prefer to be within their grade level. For example, if I have 3 fifth grade students, they're the upperclassmen, they want the kidney table because they're kind of the alpha males. Unfortunately, it doesn't always play out that way. We have some 5th grade students that are on a 3rd grade level. So we do actually mix and mingle. Again, a lot of it's about relationships. A 5th grader and a 3rd grader that get along, they can work at the same table. A 5th grader and a 4th grader that don't get along, we try to separate that group. Fortunately, we have a parapro, so it gives us a little bit of variation. Sometimes the students don't like a particular teacher that day. So a lot of it, you kind of assess the situation, make the best decision you can, do a lot of informal check-ins with the students and see if they're actually getting the material. If not, then you have to make another adjustment. But it helps when we've had a chance to talk about your evaluations. You're very candid, very constructive, and that helps us kind of do what we need to do.
Appreciate that.
Well, you have a good world view. It's not always textbook. So that's good to know that someone can help you get creative.
Absolutely.
They got to do a lot of the fun activities, and I think maybe that's something that we can incorporate into the other classes. But I know that we did for those of you that aren't aware, we did the iStation end assessment yesterday and today, right, for most of them, the ones that were here. So that's kind of how we're measuring growth for the students for these last 4 weeks, and we'll get those stats back, and I'm sure it'll be shared with everyone. If you're curious, I'm sure that'll be sent out and shared with everyone. So that is how we're going to share the kind of the growth of the students. But I do just want to kind of open it up. If anyone has any suggestions, complaints, praises, whatever it might be, it'll be real quick, but I'd like to hear it so that I can pass it on from your perspective. Yes?
Well, and I put it on my survey, and I don't know how everybody feels about this. Me doing the STEMs the whole 4 weeks was great for me, but like those that are doing reading for 4 weeks and math and iStation, I put on there, I don't know if you'll read it, but like each week we rotate, like 1 week I'll do STEM and next week I'll do math, and that way everybody gets to do the STEM and hands-on examples, so much stuff.
That's good.
So
So the teachers can rotate
yeah.
their curriculum, so they're not stuck doing math for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Reading. Okay, yeah, I like that. That's a good idea. Ms. Chapman?
And I was gonna say, our math in 2nd grade was set up differently because we had a few problems and we had more interaction with games.
Yeah.
So maybe it needs to be a more different.
Yes, ma'am?
My only issue was, I did the STEM, and I guess, I don't know if it was just our group, but we had very small groups, and sometimes I would have 1 or 2 students, and it was hard for me to do the STEM lesson with, just 1 student
Right.
in there, or 2 students. It didn't really allow for them to have conversations and that kind of, think through the process kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and I think they're hoping the numbers will get better as they get it. It was, for the most part, they didn't want it to be this way, but it was kind of thrown together this year. And the reason for that is because they were waiting on funding. They had to make sure they had the funding. I think they budgeted for $250,000, and we're over $500,000 now for everything, food and everything. So it has been a cost. But it's definitely, the reason that we're so far over is we had to buy a lot of this equipment for the first time. It's going to continue to be used, and they're going to add on and those types of things. So, but that was the reason it was kind of thrown together. Next year, I'm hoping, and I'm going to ask a couple questions about that, but I'm hoping that that we can get on it earlier as a county and start to promote it a lot more. Miss Billy Jo and I talked about there was a stigma out there about it being summer school, which a lot of people felt was not a good thing, and it's not summer school. And I think, we need to get everyone to think along those lines when we're talking about curriculum. So
That was one of the things I put on my survey, was that a lot of the parents were not aware of what it was exactly. And me, being that my child was coming, like, I called the teacher, I called the assistant principal, I was like, hey, what is this? Because how do you
And a
know?
lot of times our teachers,
Our
teachers couldn't explain because they didn't know.
It was new
But
and nobody.
but we did talk about, and because I do family engagement
next year, we definitely at each site have to have a parent
Yes.
orientation type thing. Let them know what's going on in our
Right.
school and explain it to them. And I also feel like they need to, I know they're waiting on those test scores to pick those kids, but they need to let these parents know ahead of time so that they can plan their vacations accordingly. It's not just like our CES students that don't ever go on vacation over the summer.
Sure.
We're pulling from other schools and we're
Well,
pulling
and
kids that do go on
And
vacation.
maybe even, I mean, even like this last week really seems to be a big drop, at least in
Yes.
second grade for numbers and just the kids that are here. I mean, a lot of ours are just,
They're checked out by
they're,
I see it at
so
lunch
maybe
every day.
even
I know.
shortening it to like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe do it all week, 3 weeks, instead of dragging it out the fourth week.
Or, I mean, even still doing it 4 days, but just, you know.
I dig the 4 days, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
tell you.
Yeah.
I like the